Well, here we are in the Indian Ocean, a very remote part indeed of the Indian Ocean. We are 135 meters down, that is 442 feet, kind of taking in the view, I guess. In the next hour, we'll explore an area of the ocean which is uncharted, undiscovered, unknown, just above the twilight zone beneath us, off the coral atoll of Aldabra. It is a mission to discover new species, to find new life, and to see if man's impact stretches to this pristine and protected part of the world. Well, it is science, it is exploration, it is adventure, all combined, and has never been done before on a live television program. This is a world first. Aldabra is famous for its remoteness and for its very treacherous currents. Anything could happen, so don't go anywhere. Sit back, enjoy the views like we are, and let us take you down to the depths. Very cozy in here, getting warmer by the minute, I have to say, and one person that I'm already very well acquainted with is my pilot for this mission, Randy Holt. Thank you so much for having us on your Submersible. Well, what an extraordinary working environment you have.
It's amazing down here. You know, every dive is different, and we get to go places where people have never been before. So
explain where we are. I'm going to change the cameras, which I can do. We've tucked ourselves into a crevice, haven't we? 135 meters down.
Yeah, we're kind of leaning against the edge of a cliff, an underwater cliff. We were fighting some downdrafts and some updrafts when we got to this position, so we've just kind of parked ourselves on a ledge and are trying to stay stationary.
And I should give you your proper title, of course. You are an aquanaut. If an astronaut explores space, you explore the deep.
Yes, you know, we're in inner space. It's a whole new place down here, and you know, it's a 3D environment. So we're always moving around. We got to know where we are, how we're moving through the water column. Are we lighter? Are we heavier? All of that.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing to watch you with all the controls. And as you said, you're flying these submersibles, you're not driving them. And as you said, the oceans make up 97% of the habitable space on planet Earth, which gives you both a sense of the depth of the oceans, but also that 3D environment that Randy was talking about. We have joined an expedition led by the scientists of the Nekton mission. Their aim is to perform a deep ocean health check, to map, to chart, to sample, to see perhaps what no one has ever seen before, and even search for those rarely seen species lurking in the shadows, the dream perhaps of a six-gill shark or even a coelacanth, the dino fish thought to be extinct for millions of years, and crucially to see what is happening to that often colourful coral as it faces unprecedented threats. It is so important as habitat and home to millions of species. The big question for the scientists is, could the deeper ocean be a refuge from the dangers of climate change and even from plastic pollution that we've talked so much about at Sky? Well, we are not alone down here. This is Sub 1, the red one, although it's been showered by this downdraft of sediment, which you will hear the team refer to as Omega. Out there, we can see them, is Sub 2, the yellow one. Oh, the yellow one. What are we in? The red one, I've already forgotten, which they call Kensington. Should we see if we can raise them, actually? Because in there is the principal scientist on this amazing expedition, Dr. Lucy Woodall from the Nekton mission, and piloting her sub is Robert Carmichael. Let's see if we can raise them on the sub.
Yeah, on underwater telephone. Kensington, Omega, come back. I'm going to pass you off to Anna to interview Lucy.
Hello, Lucy. It's Anna here. We're just talking about the importance of trying to explore the deep. Tell us a little bit more about your amazing mission here.
Try again.
Hello, Lucy. Can you hear me?
Release. I think she hears you. Go ahead.
Hello, Lucy. Can you hear us? I was just asking you about the reasons you're trying to explore the deep.
Yeah,
talk to you a little bit later. Thank you. So the scientists have been coming down, as I said, very delicately, trying to take samples of some of the deep corals that we've seen, some of the fans that are absolutely beautiful, certainly, and they very delicately take some of those and back up to the surface. And up on the surface, if we peer up, we can see the outline of the mothership above, and up there is my colleague Mark Austin. Mark.
Anna, we're up here, we're safe and well. It's amazing, I just can't believe that we're seeing you and hearing you like this. Just give us a sense of how you're feeling right now.
Well, apart from being very hot, it's just quite extraordinary. Just before we came on air, we saw a white-tipped shark very near. How near was it, do you think, Randy?
It was 3 meters away from us.
3 meters away from us. So you never know quite what you're going to see. All above us, it gets more and more blue. Down beneath us, it's like a murky brown colour. It looks very, very forbidding, I have to say. And so the deep beneath us, we already went down there to about 175 meters, but above, it looks pleasantly light. I can see small fish dancing on this rocky outcrop just above. And obviously, it's nice to have the company of the principal scientist, Lucy Woodall. So great to be here, Mark. But tell us a bit about where we are, just off Aldabra.
Which I suppose is called the mothership. It's a supply ship, but right now it's anything but a supply ship. It's sort of trebling up as, first of all, a TV operations center. I don't know if you can see the guys working in the porter cabin that's on this deck, and they've got the controls, and they are the reason why those pictures from you are getting to us, and then from us being satellited to the viewer. So big television operation on this ship. Also, the main reason the ship is here, it's basically a marine research scientific center. And I think also we can see now pictures of the scientists, hopefully, in their little laboratory here, several little laboratories here where they take samples, they analyze these samples, and they look at data, and they take a lot of the samples back to the UK. So this ship, anything but a supply ship right now. Thomas Moore is with me. You've been looking at the pictures there from down below. You've been here as well for 3 weeks. What do you make of what you're seeing?
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Anna saying there that she's seen a white-tip reef shark. I imagine she will see many, many more. I was walking through the shallows with black-tip reef sharks yesterday, coming right up to my legs. No harm from them, but there are many other sharks down there. She's going to have a fantastic ride.
All right, Thomas, we'll be back with you just in a moment. And Anna, back to you, but rest assured, if we lose you, I don't mean lose you like that. I mean lose communications with you. I'll be here. I'll be your backstop, as if we haven't heard enough about backstops. But let's go back down to Anna, 137 meters below. Anna.
Yeah, don't lose me, Mark. Please don't lose me. I think Randy's going to take charge of that. Thank goodness you're here.
Yeah.
The final thing to introduce is the robotic camera down here. You'll hear us talk about the ROV, the remotely operated vehicle. It is controlled at the mothership where Mark is by highly skilled pilots, I have to say, and they'll offer lots of images of our submersibles and beyond. And it's also, crucially, the backstop of pictures as well, because it is tethered to the surface, unlike us down here, for when our signal drops out from this sub, as probably it will at some point, which we are very dependent on what the currents are doing down here, and the technology of how we are communicating is completely pioneering and very challenging. So when you do lose up, as Mark said there, do expect that Mark will pick up back on the ship. And I don't know where the ROV is now, actually. Perhaps we can give it away. But it seems to be
behind us.
They're behind us. Okay, so I can't. Can we see it just there? I think we can, can't we? Well, Mark showed you Aldabra, so let's just put that, shall we, the context of the Indian Ocean. The Nekton mission, which is what we are part of, is happening in the Seychelles, in the Western Indian Ocean, the least explored, yet the most threatened of the world's oceans. And we're diving off Aldabra, an idyllic atoll 700 miles southwest of the main Seychelles island of Mahe. We're actually, though, closer to Africa, some 400 miles away from the coast there, and around 270 miles northwest of Madagascar. The visibility here is amazing, and the sphere of perspex gives us a 270-degree view. You can look above, you can look even below where our feet are, and you can look left and right, as we do all the time. You must be very tempted to look around you all the time.
Oh yes, there's so many things. In fact, if you stay in one spot for 10-15 minutes, you see something you never saw before.
Well, we can also control the cameras down here. As I said, we are perched on a rocky outcrop. There it is.
Should we try some lights?
Yeah, try some lights. There we are. We are literally hanging on to the seamount face, the wall that builds up to the atoll. If you imagine this was an old mountain that has gradually sunk to leave this enormous lagoon in the middle of it. You can sizably fit Manhattan in New York in the middle of the lagoon above us. And that's partly why we have such difficulty with the currents, because at certain times of the day, all the water floods out and all the water floods in. I think it's time for a safety check. Regular safety checks down here.
Let's check in with the surface. Topside, Omega. Our current depth is 443 feet. Our heading is 190 degrees. Life support systems are good. Affirmative, Omega out.
Well, we have to do that every 15 minutes so that Topside, as the submersible safety officer is called, can regularly keep in touch with where we are. And that was very important as we descended, wasn't it?
Yeah, we do regular communications checks with the surface. Part of that is a safety. If they lose comms with us, we have a set procedure we go through, and eventually we'll go to the surface if we haven't regained.
Absolutely. And normally you'd be mapping the reef, wouldn't you, as you descend, to try and take a transceptive video for the scientists above and give them information when they go back to wherever they're going. They're from all over the world, aren't they, the scientists up there? And a reminder, too, that we really don't know what is beneath us. No one, apart from us this morning, has ever been deeper than where we are. And we don't know what we're going to see, whether we're going to shift direction suddenly. Now, what is very important to remember here is that there are a number of zones. People used to think that it was just the shallows, and then they would think it was the depths. And now gradually they're realizing that there are many stages in between. The zones are changing. So, for example, you get the scuba zone, which is 0 to 30, perhaps 40 if you're very experienced. Here it would probably be 0 to 20 meters because there's no decompression unit here. It's very difficult to get help. So most people diving here, if they're allowed, you have to have very careful permits, would only get to 20 meters. The first of these zones then, where the scuba divers go, is called the altiphotic zone, known as the sunlit zone. Enough light penetrates this upper layer of water for reef-building corals to thrive. It's also the most exposed to the impacts of human activity. So the next zone down, which is where we are now, is the mesophotic zone, 40 meters to about 150 meters. The middle light zone, it's called, often regarded as the start of the twilight zone. At this level, sunlight starts to dwindle, corals become flatter and thinner. They are more likely to be plankton eaters than use the photosynthesis of the algae inside them. And here you begin to see the white-tip reef sharks, which I mentioned we saw just before we came on air. You're more likely to see the potato groupers, and I'm hoping we might see some of those as well. And you might see that this is perhaps a refuge from some of those dangers that I mentioned. Next is a new zone that people have found. They thought beneath us the life would tail away where there's very little light from the surface, and it became increasingly difficult to see life beneath us. But now, confirmed in a previous Nekton mission, in fact, there is the rarely photic zone, 150 meters down to 300 meters, the term that scientists use to describe rare amounts of light, rarephotic. Our mission on the whole of this week's coverage in Deep Ocean Live is to get to the bottom end of this zone, to 300 meters. The zone largely unexplored, and likely there are maybe thousands of marine creatures down there that have never really been seen before. 300 meters is the maximum that this submarine can dive to. What would happen if we went below 300 meters?
Well, we don't want to do that, Anna, but they are designed and pressure tested with some safety factors in there, so it's actually been tested beyond 300 meters, but we're not going to do that today.
Okay. Well, let's talk now to our science correspondent, Thomas Moore, who has dived deeper at a very different island in Alphonse and understands these zones and the importance of them to science, Thomas, that perhaps you get the biggest or the greatest biomass up in the shallows, but down here you start to see the sort of diversity that might provide all sorts of answers to life on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely, Anna. I mean, the textbooks would say that the greatest biodiversity, the greatest number of fish and marine species would be in the shallows, in that sunlit zone. But I think the more people do explore the deeper ocean, the more they're understanding that there is an awful lot of life down there, perhaps more life than there is in the shallows, in fact. And that is the threat, that commercial fisheries are now attracted to the mesophotic layer where you are, where you get very rich fish numbers, and those could be trawled in future before scientists have really been given a chance to understand what lives down there. Tens of thousands of marine species still need to be discovered down there, and what you're seeing around you is quite exquisite. You're seeing sea fans, you're seeing sea whips, other forms of soft corals, and all around you it's snowing, Anna. That is marine snow that is coming down from the sunlit layer. Debris, bits of food that other fish have left over, and that is going to fall all the way to the sea bottom, but much of it will be snapped up by life below. So it is quite an extraordinary scene that you are witness to.
And if we went even deeper, Thomas, to the deep, perhaps even beyond that to the abyss, the difficulty for life down there is lack of oxygen, very small amounts of oxygen, no food, as you say. The stuff that's coming down will be gobbled up as it descends deeper. No sunlight, or almost zero sunlight, and of course constant pressure, this extreme pressure and low temperatures. It's very difficult, isn't it, for life to exist as we go deeper and deeper into the ocean.
And I lost you slightly there with the communications, but I think you're talking about the importance of light to the ocean, and it drives everything. On the sunlight zone, you've got lots of corals which form these reefs. Different corals will grow at different rates. Some can grow at 25 centimeters a year, others perhaps just a few millimeters. But down where you are, although you can still get reef-building corals, because there's so little light, they tend to change their shape, so you'll get the same kind of coral, the same species of coral, but it takes on a much flatter shape, and a table coral it's called, just to try and maximize the amount of sunlight that the algae inside that turn that light into energy and feed the coral polyps. What are you seeing down there, Anna?
What are we seeing down here? We're seeing very small fish. You'd think perhaps they were more like small marine fish, Thomas. We're seeing a large number of sea fans, some a little bit difficult to see in this image we're presenting to you now, but we will move around very shortly. We're seeing some whip coral, long thin lines. They're famous because they can't retract their tentacles. If you imagine that coral is a food for large numbers of animals, most corals try to whip in their tentacles tentacles, certainly, to get out of the way. And parrotfish, famously, they bite through coral with a fused front teeth, and that is in fact what gives us our beautiful sandy beaches. And some of this debris we've had drop down, I mean, this red submersible is completely covered in that marine snow, isn't it? Some of that is probably washed away from the coral atoll and drops down on us. It's been quite amazing, actually. It's the other submersible. There it is, it's here. Okay, so we've got the yellow submarine moving in now, and you've got a grabber arm on that, haven't you? What do you use that for?
Two purposes. In this mission, we're using it to collect samples for the scientists. They identify certain species that are indicative of the area that we're exploring, and we'll collect a sample for them, which they process in the lab later. The other reason is for self-rescue.
Okay, in what way?
If we were to become entangled, we can cut a line or free up another submersible, or earlier in the mission, we can attach a recovery line to equipment that might be on the seafloor.
Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Not getting entangled, but recovering equipment.
Well, I'm glad to hear that's not going to happen to you, certainly. It's absolutely fascinating down here. I have to say that when we started this journey, the submersible tips down forward like that. It's quite amazing. So it tips down, and then we drop into almost a hole of light, and you look back, and it's as if the surface is a mirror image. It's like we should be jumping into it and not the other way around. And then what has surprised me is that you descend through blue. It's just you. It's the open seas. They describe it as the desert of the oceans. I was expecting to see fish straight away, but it's this strange solitary feeling when you're dropping down on your own. Do you get that still or not?
Every time it is exciting, yeah. Once you leave the surface, and even if there's waves and that action like you described in the different layers, once you're underwater it's smooth, and then you're just looking for the bottom. And as you get closer to that seafloor, that's when all the life stuff starts to come by and check you out.
Yes, and certainly we've had little fish. As soon as we landed on what was a sandy bottom, we had the little fish dancing all around us, didn't we? Yeah. And then here, because it's such a steep-sided underwater mountain, what did you do then?
Well, we had a lot of downdraft and a lot of updraft, so we were kind of finding different areas, getting out of the current, and we came in here to this rock. We found this neat feature, a little cave in front of us, and we're just kind of hunkered in there and actually grabbed onto the rock to try to remain stable.
Yes, and that was partly, wasn't it, to try and save battery? How much battery do you actually have?
We have quite a bit. If we're maneuvering a lot and using a lot of thrusters, it could be reduced to 2 or 3 hours. If we do a lot of time exploring and just kind of drifting with the currents that are there, we can stay down for about 6 hours.
And if something went wrong, dare I ask?
If something went wrong, we have a lot of methods to deal with that. The emergency is to come to the surface. But if we were to become stuck on the bottom, we have 96 hours of emergency life support. So 4 days.
4 days.
Yeah.
And how would you be rescued somewhere like this, 135 meters down?
Well, fortunately, we have 2 other tools on the mission. We have a second submersible with the same depth capabilities and another arm on that. So they can come investigate the entanglement. They can hook up a recovery line. They can try to cut us loose of whatever we're in. We also have the ROV, which I believe can go to 500 meters, and it as well has a little grabber arm to be able to connect some kind of a rescue line.
And in fact, you can see the grabber arm on the front of the ROV, certainly. That allows it to get into a cage, and so the little thing you can see at the bottom front of your screen, that is the grabber arm of the ROV, and that gets into the cage that then is raised to the surface to get out of the way. So it looks like it's a little piece of coral stuck to the top of it, isn't it? Now, where's the other submersible gone? I can't quite see it.
No, I don't see them either.
I don't see them. Where are they? Interesting. Behind us? Let's have a look round.
Do you see their lights anywhere?
No.
They might be just below us a little bit.
And I have to say that we descend separately, don't we? And then we meet up. Below us. No, can't quite see them, but
no, we can't see them.
But it's very difficult sometimes in the gloomy light to try and meet up, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's quite difficult to meet up under the water.
It is. In fact, today we descended together, which makes it a little easier to stay together. But we do have the tracking system on the ship, so they have the ability to know what the position of each sub is and how to get us together.
It's worth pointing out at this point, I guess, that I am in fact the co-pilot.
That's true.
Lucky,
yeah.
lucky
and
you.
you're doing an excellent job.
I can't find the other submarine. That's one of the submersible, rather, which is one of the things I'm supposed to do, isn't it? If anything happens to you, then I would have to take over.
Yeah, that's correct. If I was to pass out for some reason, it's actually very simple to bring the submarine to the surface. There's 2 valves you open up, and the air will start to go into our main ballast tanks, and you're on the way to the surface.
And we use the sub radio, don't we? What do you call it? Telephone.
We call it an underwater telephone.
Underwater telephone.
Yeah, and you can talk to the surface. It's through water columns. It's a hydrophone, and the surface officer has a list of emergency procedures to talk you through as well.
Okay, and I would say, pilot asleep, would I? Is that
That's a nice way to put it.
Well,
yeah,
it seems to be how you're practicing it. Anyway,
yeah,
pilot
Randy
asleep.
fell asleep. I'm bringing the submarine.
Randy fell asleep. Co-pilot ready to ascend.
Yeah.
And if it was an emergency?
You'd want to say X-ray, X-ray, X-ray.
Okay. And they would know to do something up there, would they?
Yeah, they'd know they'd freeze all the marine traffic, all the boats, and they'd prepare for the sub to come to the surface and to come up quick.
What are the elements that you need to keep an eye on when you're talking to the surface safety officer? You've got depth, pressure, temperature, all of these things. Why are they important to you?
It's important to give a consistent report. As you can hear with the comms, sometimes they go in and out. So having that steady report of what depth are we, what direction are we heading, and our life support system still on and running. So we do those checks every 15 minutes.
Trying to see where they are. I can see some light. Where are they? They're below us, I think, underneath us. Let's look under our feet. Maybe they're under us. No, can't see you. Below and to our left.
Yeah, they're still in our
We can
blind
see
spot.
Below us. And the importance of pressure, obviously, it's absolutely critical, isn't it? If you go 1,000 meters, it's 100 times the pressure. 300 meters, 30 times the pressure. So if we accidentally got out of this right now, what would happen to us?
Well, there's so, as you mentioned, the pressure. There's so much force on every little, square centimeter of that hatch. In fact, if we were to undog the hatch, you couldn't even open it. Yeah,
really?
Both of us putting our shoulder into it.
Okay. Well, that's amazing, isn't it? And the other submersible is down beneath us. Now, a little bit earlier, certainly, we had a visitor. We were moving up slightly, and there was a potato grouper who decided to come and say hello.
You want to say hi to our camera? I'll put you in the camera view?
Yeah.
Please? That'd be nice.
Oh, did you do that? That's good.
Do they want us to move around? Okay.
That was absolutely amazing, wasn't it?
That was quite an experience.
That was quite an experience. They're nosy animals. Why do you think they come and find us?
We're aliens in their environment, so they come and they check us out, and I think they're just curious.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, he followed us up for, 200 feet, do you think? How much is that? Just about 70 meters he decided to rise to the surface with us?
Possibly more. In fact, I saw him first down beneath the sub, and then he kind of came up and was exploring and getting right up against the sphere.
Absolutely brilliant. Now, we were talking about pressure, temperature, and everything. The need to be, as you said, you couldn't push this up. Why do you have all these dials behind you? Because you also have a digital display as well, don't you?
Yeah, the digital display controls some of the lights, but it's mostly for convenience, navigation for the pilot. There's a lot of redundancy in the submersible, so we do have analog gauges and a valve to be able to shut down any particular part of any of the systems. So just from the top, the green is the oxygen. That's part of our life support. And we are bringing pure oxygen into the cabin at the same rate that we metabolize it. So we always keep it at that normal level. The black is the ballast air that we use to distribute to the ballast systems that allows us to control our buoyancy. underwater telephone you saw, and then down the panel is the electrical switches.
And the only way to feel the true temperature, and this is getting really wet up here, isn't it, is to feel this, and then you suddenly feel actually that it's quite cool, because the rest of it feels really hot because it's such an enclosed environment.
Yeah, our acrylic sphere that we're in, while it's great visibility, it's a big insulator, right? So this aluminum hatch, we can feel directly what the water temperature is.
I'm going to dry us off, actually. Yeah. It drips like rainwater, doesn't it, actually?
No, that condensation is good. That means the life support system is working.
Okay, well, I'll leave it up with it. It's dripping on us. And you do constantly dry ourselves off. You don't really want moisture in here. When we're getting in at the surface, you're very careful not to let water get in, aren't you?
Yeah, that can affect the performance of the scrubber. And obviously electronics don't like seawater.
Yes. Yeah. And each of the submersibles have slightly different scientific tasks to perform, don't they? So what is yours? I mean, at the moment we're locked on I'm not sure you can quite see it, but we're locked on just beneath that shot by your grabber arm onto the rocky surface.
Yeah, the Omega has been set up for this mission as what we're calling the sampling sub. So with the arm, we're collecting samples at the direction of the scientists. We also have a water collection system to sample water at different depths, as well as the CTD, which is monitoring the conductivity, temperature, and depth throughout our dive. And then the camera with the feed that you're seeing, that's our HD camera that allows us to actually film certain specimens in detail.
And I'm in the red sub here. We've got Lucy and Robert in the yellow sub, the different jobs, as you were saying. If we put our lights on even more, can we do that? Are we fully lit up?
We'll turn everything on.
And then you can spot us. There we go. And is that helpful when you get even deeper and even darker?
We navigate with the lights off a lot of the time because of the deep blues. It's easier to see distance. But once we get close to something, we'll put on a lot of light, and that brings the color back into what we're seeing and makes it easier to identify the species and the different things that we're looking at.
Fantastic. Well, and all of those elements, as we mentioned earlier, are taken up to the surface, where there are all sorts of scientists at work right now. Mark Austin is there.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Anna. We take so much of this for granted, don't we? Communications, and on land with GPS and satellites, but of course all of that doesn't really work underwater. So it's worth explaining perhaps how we are doing this. And it is that we've got the two subs below us now at 120, 130 meters below the ship. And at that level, salt and pressure and the lack of electromagnetic waves means that the traditional TV signal does not get through. So a receiver has been lowered to between the subs and where we are, in fact. So the subs then use LED lights. LED lights are transmitting the beams up to the receiver, audio and visual signals, and then it's transferred by cable to the ship where we are. And from here, a satellite beam, a normal, traditional television communication means satellite gets the picture to you. Well, I'm joined by Oliver Steeds, who's the head of the mission. Thanks very much for joining us. I mean, seeing pictures like this, live pictures like this, it's been a bit of a mission of yours and a dream of yours.
It has, it's been a dream, and I think that's because there's two stories in the world about the ocean. One is a negative one, and we know what's happening to our ocean. We're sleepwalking into a disaster at the moment. And there's the other side, which is just how wonderful our ocean is. This is the blue planet, and the beating heart of our planet is our ocean. And we need people to fall in love with it. We need to inspire people in a different way. And I hope pictures like this can do that, because if we can do that, if people can fall in love with the ocean, then there's a hope they'll want to look after it. And if they want to look after it, maybe the politicians will be given a mandate to act, and act a lot faster than they are at the moment.
Yeah, look, we could have done this anywhere. Why Aldabra? I mean, obviously it's a very special place, but why Aldabra, and why now?
So Aldabra is the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, but there's been no research beneath 30 meters here. So we need to understand how the ocean is changing, particularly the Indian Ocean, which is the least explored and one of the most unprotected oceans on the planet. So what we're here to do is to try and gather that actionable data, undertake a series of first ascents, and use that data to help inform the Seychelles government, particularly, about their commitment to protect 30% of the ocean by 2020. That's an area about twice the size of the entire UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's a protected haven in many ways, but even here, we may be seeing the signs of damage from climate change and pollution.
We are, yes. I mean, on the actual island itself, in Aldabra, as we'll see tomorrow, there's a lot of plastic that's washing up there. We're also experiencing an El Nino in these parts as well. The warming ocean, the anthropogenic heat that we produced is now going into the ocean, warming it up, the impact on the corals. So it's an important time to try and establish a baseline in those depths to see how that ocean's changing and how that's going to affect the lives and livelihoods of 2.5 billion people that live in the nations around the Indian Ocean.
Yeah, all right, Oliver, well done. Thanks very much indeed. And it's just extraordinary. We're getting this television signal from down there where Anna is, and Anna may even have a spot of news for you down there.
You have to. Mark, I can't quite tell whether you finished. I do apologise. It's quite muddy sound down here. Now, we promised you a news bulletin from the deep, from 135 metres down. Here we go then. And there is no, I'm apologising for this, no escaping Brexit news even down here. Our top stories here on Sky News, and Theresa May will hold more talks with DUP MPs and her own backbenchers as she tries to gather support for her Brexit deal. The government has said there will be no vote in the House of Commons if it looks likely to lose. To New Zealand now, and the Cabinet has backed gun law changes in principle after the Christchurch shootings. It follows the deaths of 50 people at 2 mosques on Friday. And there are calls for addiction to social media to be classed as a disease. A new report by MPs wants more regulation to protect children from firms which they say are operating in an online Wild West. Well, that is your news from the deep. I'm pretty sure that no one has done that before, so there you go, another world first. I think we need another safety check, don't we? I have to be quiet when these happen.
Let's do it. Top side, Omega. Omega reporting depth 444 feet, heading 190 degrees, stationary, life support is good.
Heading 190 degrees, expert.
Good copy.
Well, don't forget, if you want to get involved in this, and people really want you to, because in showing the oceans like this, with the remote operating vehicle filming both of these submersibles, they really want people to see what the ocean is like. Do get in touch using hashtag #DeepOceanLive. And as well as being on Sky News and on Sky Atlantic, we're also on YouTube as well. So a fantastic way of getting involved. Also a reminder too that on Wednesday we will be doing a question and answer session from the deep. If you have any questions, please do tweet us, #DeepOceanLive. And if you've done anything to pass on plastic, #PassOnPlastic is the way to let us know about that. Now, can we talk to the yellow sub? Let's try. Hello, Robert and Lucy, can you hear us? Via the underwater telephone. Right, let's try that.
Kensington, Omega.
Omega, I'm approaching you from your starboard side. I'm at 469.
Copy, depth 469 on our starboard side. You want to talk to Lucy?
Yes, let's try.
Would you like my light on?
This way.
I pushed the button, yeah, talk right into the word there.
Hello, Lucy. This is such an exciting mission for you, isn't it? To be the first team ever to go deep off Aldabra Atoll. It must be an amazing feeling for all of you.
Yes, definitely.
an amazing privilege and a responsibility to be down here to make sure that we capture the biology so that it is useful for generations to come.
What have you seen so far to make you excited about the deep? What have you seen so far down here to make you excited that this is a healthy environment for marine animals?
We were able to look at all of the communities. Oh wow, we're looking right now at the shark. Look up, look up.
Look up. Oh, shark, shark.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Straight down.
Straight down. Amazing.
Okay, so we're back on track. Down here we can really see how all of the animals are living together. We can see how they interact, how the fish are living in and around the coral. And the corals themselves are living on the ridges and the overhangs where there's a lot of food for them to eat.
Is that because they are plankton feeders rather than needing the light from photosynthesis from algae that live amongst them?
That's right. The corals that live down at these depths are filter feeders. So they live on the food in the water column, and that provides them with energy down here.
And if there was one creature that you would really like to see down here for yourself, Lucy, what might it be?
Oh, I might have to have two. I have a bit of an interest in seahorses. That would be amazing. But oh wow, if we could see a celiac camp, otherwise known as a dino fish, that would be really neat. So I am looking at all the little crevices and canyons and all the caves because that's where we think they might live.
Lucy, thank you so much for the moment. Thank you. Well, we've certainly been looking out for... Let's turn that down if you don't mind. Randy, there we go. We'll turn that down so we can hear ourselves. Let's just remind you of the journey down here to 135 metres. As I said, the submersible tips forward, doesn't it? Tips right forward to start entering the ocean, and you drop down through almost a circle of light as you come down, dropping down through the blue of the ocean, brighter blue than down here, certainly, until you get to the bottom, and you're met with perhaps some fish if you're lucky, if not. And certainly earlier we were met with a dancing array of small fish. An extraordinary journey down for a novice like me, but I know you're probably a little bit more used to it, aren't you?
Every dive is exciting, though. You know, around here it's a place I've never gone before. The life is different, and so it's always amazing.
I think we're going to move soon. I'm just going to remind people that the technology is extremely difficult. We're trying to transmit pictures and sound using light beams through water. It's extremely difficult. So shall we? It'll take a bit of time. I'm going to let you just get ready to do that. It's going to take a couple of minutes for us to get ready to go.
All right. Let's just turn a couple of systems back on here. First one being the air conditioner so we can see. Kensington Omega. Just confirming you are clear, we're going to maneuver out of this location. Yeah, copy. Right behind us, 456. All right, leaving the wall. Negative on lights, just don't come behind us.
Don't move too far, will you? So just so you know, the first thing he has to do is remove the grabber arm. I'm just going to turn around so you can see any of the debris coming off there. You can see a little bit. Just remove the grabber arm and put that away. That's been holding us to the rocky surface here. It's probably harder for you to hear at the moment while you're doing, what's that, putting a bit, is that the thrusters?
That's putting air in the ballast tank.
Putting air in the ballast tank to make sure that we stay up. So with a red sub by the wall above, just leaving that rocky outcrop, sea urchins are there, some beautiful wire coral I can see as well, and again these are more plankton feeders than those that need photosynthesis. If I look up I can see the top of the rocky outcrop. As we swing round, see all that snow, the marine snow that Thomas was talking about, because it's as if there's sand all over this rocky outcrop. And you can see probably the grabber arm now as well if you're on the ROV shot. I'll turn some lights off for you. Is that better? There we go. We're just moving along this rock face, if that's the best way to describe it. There is the remote camera and the pilot up above, Jimmy, doing a fantastic job there, keeping us as we move along.
Look at this coral over here.
We're just going to come and show you a beautiful, probably a sea fan, I think, isn't it? And this is the sort of samples that they've been taking. You have to be very careful. They have a permit to take 5 corals only at a certain depth, 100 to 120 meters, and then the next permit kicks in below 200 meters. So it's very strictly controlled, the samples that these scientists can take. You see how flat they are, certainly, and that's to catch some of the plankton as it rises up from the deep. Sea urchin, can you see a little sea urchin over here? It's tiny. We can get, the good thing about this is we can get really near, which is fantastic for science, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things they've been asking us to do before we collect the sample is to film it when it's in situ, as they call it. So what does it look like when it's here on the rock and before it comes out of the water? And we collect it and they can look at it in the lab afterwards.
Thomas, this is such an exciting moment always to be moving around in this submersible, examining the creatures that are all along this rocky outcrop and this seamount underneath, never knowing what's in the nooks and crannies. There's another sea cave that we're coming up to here. Thomas, I know everyone on deck is desperate to hear news of some of the creatures that we see down here. We seem to have difficulty, certainly. Oh, there we go. There's the other submarine. There's the yellow one for us, doing some work down at the bottom there, moving around just in our shot as well, actually. It's lovely to see them at last. They've been behind us for most of this. And the view is absolutely extraordinary, looking up this sea underwater mountain wall, as you can see, and all the life that is clinging to the surface, the small fish that are desperately trying to see it. See if we can resume communication, shall we, with Thomas Moore on the surface. And Thomas, I have to say, we've been very privileged to see a number of sharks on our various dives.
We can barely hear you on the mothership. You're very lucky to have seen that shark. It's impossible to tell from this distance what it was. But I can tell you that there are an awful lot down there with you. It's a sign of a healthy reef. Sharks are what are known as apex predators, and not the only ones down there. There are groupers too that are big consumers of smaller fish on the reef. Why are there so many? Well, because this is the middle of a really strictly enforced marine protected area. What you're seeing there is evidence that it works, that these fish are given a chance to grow to an enormous size, that there is plenty of food for them to eat, and that's why the apex predators will thrive. It is a lesson to other areas of the world that marine protection can lead to quite extraordinary marine life, and that's the benefit for them and indeed for us as we watch these pictures.
And Thomas, there are said to be about 19 species of shark that prowl the 26 million square miles of the Indian Ocean, stalking their prey. And as you said, the Aldabra group of islands, this one specifically, is especially important for sharks. There are at least 10 shark species in these waters. The presence of sharks, as you say, indicating that healthy ecosystem. And in this massive lagoon that we talked about, a number of sharks actually use that to raise their juveniles, the black-tipped reef sharks, for example, and the lemon sharks too. But there are also the white-tipped reef sharks that we think we saw right at the start here, and a number of other sharks like hammerheads that, if you're lucky enough, you see. But the other submarine now, Submersible, I keep getting that wrong, don't I? They're completely different, is now beneath us once again as we park ourselves back in to see. We'll turn our lights on, shall we, and just see what we can see here. Can we go up slightly and see if we can catch these little yellow ones?
Yeah.
We're just moving up slightly. We're putting all this glare on these little fish. You have never, ever seen anything like this. Just a reminder that we are the team who have been the deepest ever in this part of the world. That if you are a scuba diver, you go to 30 meters. Around here, perhaps only 20 meters because it is so remote. And we are now, can we just check our depth?
Yeah, 446 feet. We're still at that
135 meters we are roughly.
There's a lot of caves here and a lot of places for different fish and different creatures to hide in. I see a sponge in that one up there.
And sponges, it's a bit like corals as well. They are animals. Sponges are very slow-moving animals. Some adult sponges are fixed, and certainly looks like that when you mentioned was fixed. They've thought to have evolved around 500 million years ago. Today there are more than 5,000 known species of sponge, another 5,000 thought never to have been discovered. And that is partly what this mission does. It's very confident it will find new species, and certainly the samples we've taken back of the sea fans, they'll have to go to museums to check images to see if that is new. They'll have to check them with electromagnifying techniques as well, because it's very hard to identify, and some corals might be new to the world. As we move along, who are based on Aldabra. They're there for a couple of years. One of them, who has now joined the Nekton mission, is with Mark now. Mark.
Well, she knows a bit about those waters that we're looking at right now. She is from the Seychelles, and she was actually the first Seychellois to take a dive like Anna Botting has now taken. What do you make of what you're seeing?
It's just unbelievable, because for someone who's been here for 2 years, you will never actually imagine that this place is like deep down there. It's like so beautiful, so much environment that you didn't expect it to be like down there in the deep ocean. Is like so beautiful, so amazing. yeah, it's unbelievable how it is.
Yeah, and how, I mean, you went down the other day. What was it like being the first person from the Seychelles to descend to the depths like this?
It was just amazing. The feeling was, it was mixed feelings. It was just, for the first time to ever be able to go down from like a scuba, lower than the scuba depth, it was like just breathtaking, beautiful, and it's just incredible to see such things. It was so calm, so like you see fishes, like just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Now, you spent 2 years on Aldabra.
Yes.
Very briefly, just sum up what that island means to you. Just very quickly sum up.
To me, it became a home for 2 years. It became a place that every day you wake, you see the same place, but you always see something new. You always experience a new thing. Every day was not, it was the same day, a new day, yes, but there was always something new happening. There was always, like you go diving, you always see something different, even if you're going the same spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been a lovely place, a place that is close to my heart. Yes.
All right. Well, Stephanie, thanks very much. We've just got a few minutes left of this extraordinary hour.
Yes.
So let's go back down to Anna, somewhere down in the deep.
Mark, thanks very much indeed. Down in the deep, but looking up actually at a shark that has still been circling. I don't know if the ROV can see those pictures. It's quite murky for us to see. We can't identify what type it is, but fantastic to see the shark above us investigating. And if we look above our head, there are all these tiny fish that are just watching us from above. It's absolutely wonderful to see. And in front of us, of course, the yellow submarine with Robert and with Lucy, who are still investigating all the nooks and the crannies as we have been. Wonderful to try and peer inside at all the creatures that might be living here. Who knows? Some of them may never have been seen, and already we know that corals are used in cancer care, like prostaglandin, and so there's still so much to investigate that may be used for humanity. That's why they need to be investigating. That's why the scientists from the Nekton mission are on this ship, trying to look more deeply at what is under, what is in the deep ocean, and what they can see. I'm going to show you the yellow submarine again. There it is, the lights against the wall. You can see how steep it is, that it rises from the deep, that the thermal currents, they're called thermoclines, that whip around these areas. That's the difference, isn't it, between temperature in the ocean layers?
Yeah, the different layers.
We're floating. We don't even need the thrusters on. The currents are good. We're just about static. Thank you so much for watching us here. Thank you so much to Randy for taking us through in your world. It's an extraordinary place to be, I have to say. That's pretty much all we have time for tomorrow. Hopefully Mark will be down, perhaps going deeper. We'll assess perhaps the plastics that we see here, and also on the island of Aldabra. Plenty more from us down in the deep on Deep Ocean Live. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome to the Indian Ocean, where we have just, well, we've witnessed a broadcasting first, because about a couple of hundred meters below me has been my colleague Anna Botting for the last hour. I hope you've been watching the first ever live television broadcast from under the ocean, and those are the pictures that we've been looking at. This is a live picture now, and we've been looking at some wonderful pictures, and I hope that Anna Botting, now I'm aware that she's got to come up because they've been down for some time now, but I hope that Anna can hear me, because I want to ask her, and be the first to ask her, what that experience was like. Anna, I hope you can hear me still.
Well, it is entirely otherworldly, Mark. That's the only way I can describe it. We just turned our air conditioning off so you can hear it better. So we'll start to probably fog up in here quite quickly. And in fact, this starts dripping rain on us, such is the condensation in this small perspex sphere that we're in. It is entirely otherworldly. If I just change my camera, you can see what it looks like. That is the other submersible. It's the yellow submersible with the principal scientist in it, Lucy Woodall, and the pilot Robert Carmichael, who've also been down here. We're a little bit deeper, I think, now, aren't we? Can't quite read your...
488 feet.
488 feet down, so it's about 145. We're sinking slightly at the moment, so we can get a little bit nearer to the yellow submersible as we see, and we can see them in there. Perhaps they can wave to us. No, they're looking, because we have just identified some corals that we've not seen, certainly down here yet. There, Lucy's looking around at us, wonderful. But it really is otherworldly. That's the only way to describe it. First of all, we've had a shark circling around us for most of the programme. When you look up, it's a beautiful blue colour, but when you look below, it is a murky, a brown. It's not black, it's not deep blue as I was expecting it to be, but certainly here, because the lagoon of Aldabra flushes out, there is a lot of sediment that falls, and perhaps that's why you get a sense of it being a brown and otherworldly. We can't show what it looks like down, can we? We can't tip over.
No. All I can see is the abyss down there.
That's partly because we're right by this rock face, I have to say. It doesn't give us quite so much maneuverability. And this really shows the geography of this coral atoll right in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It is a previous mountain. It's called a sea mount now. What would have happened is that the mountain itself would have begun to fall and descend and to drop, leaving behind the coral that had made its home. And certainly what they were expecting to see here is coral at different levels of depth. And previous ice ages would then have flooded, post-ice ages would have flooded, and the sea levels would have risen. We're a little bit further out, I think, than the nearest coral reef right now, aren't we? Yes? So we're seeing the old mountainside
the ancient ones.
The ancient mountainside here, and the corals that have made this place their home. The small fish too. Are you surprised, Randy, by how many fish you see at a depth like this?
I'm not super surprised. What intrigues me is that a lot of these you expect to see up in a shallow reef, and then we go deeper and they're down here as well. So it's amazing what life is where we've never been and gone looking for it.
And these are extraordinary, aren't they? Look at these beautiful, the light of our camera picking out is beautiful. Yellow, I'm presuming it's a coral, I don't know. We've seen sponges as well, haven't we? And what is important to remember is that these are living animals, and they don't look like they are, they look like they're plants. These are living creatures that are probably on this rock face in order to catch the plankton that is swirling around the ocean and is brought up from the deep. As we move along, you see the different colours and the white light of the beach almost that has come down as marine snow. Absolutely beautiful to see these things that we've never seen before. And just above us, all the fish, the different size fish that come to see us. They're swimming in front, they're swimming above. What we're we're going to do now is we're going to have to start ascending. We've nearly got to the end of our battery life, have we, do you think? We need the power to take us to the surface. What will happen is that you will eventually lose communications with us. I don't know if the remote camera can see the lights above us. I can't quite see it now. That is a depressor connected to the ship, and we are beaming a light to that, and that's how we are managing to communicate. It's had to come really quite close to us today to try and see if we could get communication with the other submersible. That will have to be pulled out of the way, and as soon as that is done, then you will lose communications with us. But the remotely operated vehicle over there, the remote camera, which is being piloted from the ship's surface, will hopefully follow us up all the way to the surface. We're currently, what depth do you think that is?
478, yeah, 137.
137 meters. So you will hopefully follow us up as far as you can from 137 meters down all the way to the surface. And we'll see you then, perhaps, will we? Mark, see you shortly.
Well, I certainly hope so, Anna. Yeah, you get yourself up here. Get Randy moving on that submersible, and we'll hopefully see you before this hour is out, back on the surface and back with me here. I mean, it has been quite a spectacle, definitely a television first. There's wonderful pictures, and being able to see Anna so clearly, Thomas Moore, our science correspondent here, see her so clearly and hear her, not quite so clearly, but at least we did hear. What did you, I mean, did you think that would be what we saw? I mean, did you think we could do it, first of all?
It was a challenge, definitely. I think the currents around here have been extremely unpredictable, as they are around many of these enormous underwater mountains. There are around 100,000 of those dotted around the world, but only a few dozen have been explored, and we are the first to explore the seamount here in Aldabra. But they do whisk these currents around because all that deep water is pushed up the side of the mountain and can cause unpredictable currents. And also, of course, there is this enormous lagoon in the center of here, big enough to swallow up Manhattan in New York quite comfortably. All that water, or nearly all of that water, will come out at low tide and spread around the island. That too makes it extremely challenging for what we've done today.
Yeah, I should just explain to viewers where we are. We're on a supply ship, an offshore supply ship, and we're just about 400 or 500 meters off the island. It's actually on this side. You can see it, tantalizing, because not many people can go there. You did. You managed to stay the night there with the local rangers who are working on the island, just a few of them. But it's an island that's been protected from man by man, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a fantastic research station run by Seychelles Islands Foundation. They have a team there who safeguard the wildlife there. It is something which is where nature is in charge, not humans. Although sadly you do see the effects of humans here in terms of climate change. So you will see some bleaching of the coral here when the coral spits out the algae that it has inside, which it depends on for energy. But what's remarkable, and this is what I found yesterday, there is some research on the island which shows that the coral here recovers much more quickly from these episodes, and rather than dying, which is what's happening sadly elsewhere in the Seychelles, it seems to be much more robust. And that they think is possibly because we are surrounded by this marine protected area. There is no commercial fishing, so there are plenty of herbivorous fish chomping away at the algae that would otherwise swallow up the reef. Right. And that is crucial for what we see here in terms of fish life and the coral.
Absolutely. And what we can't see from those pictures, that is Aldabra, but beyond that sort of reef, because it's the second largest coral reef, coral atoll in the world, beyond that is this massive lagoon, 16 miles by 5 miles or something, which is the very central life of that atoll. And the water rushes through the inlet on the atoll, bringing with it all sorts of wonderful marine life.
Yeah, that's right. An awful lot of sediment, and sediment equals nutrients. And where you've got nutrients, you will find an awful lot of life, starting from the very small and, of course, attracting the very big. And this area does have a phenomenal number of apex predators. These are animals which are at the top of the food chain. So thinking of sharks, you're thinking of groupers, and they're much larger than they would be elsewhere and in much greater numbers, just because the waters here are so rich.
Let's just explain what we're seeing. I mean, these are pictures taken now from our remotely operated camera, being operated from just across the ship, across the deck here. And we are watching the submersibles ascending, coming back, and surely, hopefully, they will be back on the surface, and Anna will be back with us. But that camera, you can see just the front of it. That camera is what we're relying on at the moment for these pictures.
Yes, indeed. That is the claw that
yes.
the remote-operated submersible uses, of course, to take submersibles and so on that we're seeing in the foreground there. But that is one of the submersibles rising to the surface. They do like to take their time. They don't like to rush it. They could, in an emergency, come up in 10 meters from great depth, to 10 minutes rather. But they do, for the comfort of everybody on board, like to come up a little more slowly.
Yeah. Now, had we time during the previous hour, we were going to talk a little bit about what you've seen over the last, 3 weeks you've been on this boat. Just tell us a little bit about what you've seen. Hammerhead sharks, and sun rays.
At Alphonse, which was the first island group that I visited, I went down in one of the submersibles to 200 meters, and yes, I did see an awful lot of life there. I saw corals, of course, but also a hammerhead shark, and I barely had time to get my camera out before this hammerhead was right on me. It's something that I've always wanted to see. These extraordinary sharks with that great classic shape of the hammer at the front, and it's got its eyes on the end, and it also seems to have methods of detecting the rays buried in the sand there in its head too, and it gives it the almost stereoscopic ability to pinpoint the ray and snaffle it while it's there.
They're very clever.
The
they can apparently detect the heartbeat of fish hiding in the sand, apparently.
Yeah,
so
absolutely right. And sharks do have this ability with the lateral lines and also sensors in their heads too, that they're able to almost have that sixth sense. They've got very good vision, good hearing too, smell, of course, as we know, and also this ability to
eagle rays you saw?
Eagle rays too, beautiful creatures, 1.5 meters across, and of course it's their fins which have become extended and developed into wings almost, and they fly almost like birds in formation under the water, and they too and then attract other fish to them, hoping to pick off the scraps as they feed.
Yeah, and sunfish now. I've never seen a sunfish.
Yeah,
they're pretty big from the pictures I saw.
Yeah, sadly I wasn't the one to see this. You'll be talking to the scientist shortly who did. But the sunfish who did see that was blown away because it is so rare to see these things, particularly under the water. You do see them bobbing around on the surface with their very high dorsal fins. They're sometimes mistaken for sharks,
yes.
But it was quite an amazing thing just to be swimming very slowly past the submersible, really entering their world.
Yeah, and just before we came out here, everybody was talking about the coelacanth. I went to a laboratory in Oxford where they were talking about the coelacanth, which was it's a living fossil of a fish. Tell us about the coelacanth.
So the coelacanth was thought to be extinct. They thought it died out 68 million years ago, but last century, a few hundred miles to the south here, down in South Africa, the Mozambique Channel, a fisherman pulled up a coelacanth in its net, and they immediately thought that this was a hoax, that it could not possibly be true, and yet we have dino fish, that living fossil, now possibly in these waters. The kind of environment we have here in Aldabra is very like the environment where we have now seen living examples of the coelacanth. This is such a strange fish. It is the only one to have a 3-lobed tail. It is the only one to have the beginnings of legs, terrestrial animal legs in its fins, and the beginnings perhaps of lungs too. It's such an unusual fish. We don't really understand where it lives. We don't understand where it fits in to the family tree of life, but it's there.
Yeah, and I mean, is there a chance of them finding new species, do you think, on this trip?
Almost undoubtedly, Mark. The more you explore the deep, the more you find. It's probable that there are tens of thousands of marine species yet to be discovered. These are unexplored waters, and as you go deeper, you will find more. You will find corals, you will find fish, you'll find other species too. Really just the work they're doing here on the Nekton ship is beginning to catalogue that life for the Seychelles government.
Yeah, and just finally on this, they put a baited camera down. And it drew dividends, didn't it? I mean, is that a common thing to do in these?
It's a great way of seeing marine life undisturbed by humans. So if a submersible or indeed if a scuba diver goes down there with a camera, you're of course going to get the interaction between that human being and whatever they're seeing. But if you put a baited camera down there, you're drawing in marine life. They smell the churned up fish guts in the bait, and it will come in, and you can capture that on camera. We've seen sharks, we've seen groupers. It is quite an extraordinary sight.
Yeah, and the pictures we're seeing now from under, in the depths are, as I was saying, from the remote control. It looks as though the submarines. Oh no, one of the submarines is still down. Submersibles is still down.
Yeah, you can just see how steep that wall is, Mark. That's the underwater mountain we've been talking about that rises 4,000 or 5,000 meters from the floor of the Indian Ocean, extremely steeply. And we don't really know what's going on under the water, because the last time this was plumbed with lead weights and rope was 1800s, and really we're only now beginning to understand. As we put out survey ships with proper sonar equipment, we'll get a much better idea of the shape of the seafloor around here in Aldabra.
Yeah, okay, wonderful pictures there, and thanks Thomas for the time being, and there's the mothership waiting now for the return, well, Havana Bosching really, waiting for the return of the submersible that brought you those wonderful pictures for the last hour. And what you can see there is very interesting. This is the depressor, it's a receiver really, and this is the bit of equipment that got you those pictures. This is the bit of equipment that the LED lights from the submersibles has to hit, so that the receiver, or depressor they call it, can then relay the pictures by cable to this ship where we are. And that is good news, because that means that's the safe return of the receiver, and that means we can use it again tomorrow for Deep Ocean Live. And with me now is Roanna Walton, who is one of the scientists on this trip. Roanna, thanks very much for joining us. I should ask you first, I suppose, what have you made of the past hour or so watching those?
It's been absolutely...
You've seen it all before, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I've never seen Aldabra that deep, so it's been incredible. I know Aldabra, I know the shallow reefs, I know down to 30 meters, but I've never seen anything that deep here. So it's been an incredible experience to witness it, you know, live on TV, seeing them descending and seeing the changes in the reef as it gets much deeper.
So let's be clear, it's a first broadcasting from that depth, but scientists won't have been at that depth in this area
Exactly.
before.
So because the atoll is so remote, it's so far from anywhere, it's very difficult to do any research here, particularly underwater. So this whole atoll is relatively unexplored. It's only really the shallow reefs that we've begun to understand in recent years, but even much deeper, we still don't know much about it.
And coral is your area of expertise.
Yeah.
You've been in the Seychelles for some time,
yeah.
I know. What is your view about the state of the coral at the moment here?
So the state of the coral at Aldabra is much better than it is in other areas of Seychelles. So unfortunately we suffered a global bleaching event in 2016, and the reefs in Seychelles were hit quite hard. The inner islands suffered a large high mortality of coral, but Aldabra has been much more resilient. So the corals here show that they're recovering already, and they didn't suffer a high percentage of mortality like other areas in Seychelles.
Right, and do you think what we find, or what you guys find here, will be a positive story? Because there are so many stories of coral being impacted
around the world. How do you think it'll be a positive story?
I hope that it will, yeah, of course. I think we've already seen positive stories from Aldabra in the past, and I think it can only be a positive thing that we're actually getting to explore and understand the deeper areas of Aldabra now. That's always good for research and science.
And the question I asked Thomas a little earlier, why here? What is so special about this ecosystem?
So Aldabra is very special because it is so remote. It's suffered far less anthropogenic impacts than anywhere else in this region. So there is fewer effects of pollution, of human involvement. So for that reason, it's remained a lot more resilient. It also has a thriving terrestrial ecosystem, which also has recent research has found that both of those ecosystems together thrive at a better underwater coral reef system as well.
Okay, and just finally, just explain to us, so you will go down, you'll get samples of coral, and what will you do with those samples of coral? How will it help you understand what is happening here?
Yeah, so in the shallows we're collecting some samples of soft corals and hard corals, and also even down to the depths we're collecting samples of soft corals, and that's to get a bit of a catalogue of the diversity here. So we're looking for those common species so we can get an understanding of the composition of species from sort of 5 metres all the way down to 250
all right.
deeper.
Rowanna, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Matt.
You can see pictures there of Anna Botting very close up in her submersible, looking very happy, and why not, because that is a wonderful experience that she has just gone through. And let's have a look.
I'm already very well acquainted with is my pilot for this mission, Randy Holt. Thank you so much for having us on your submersible. Well, what an extraordinary working environment you have.
It's amazing down here. You know, every dive is different, and we get to go places where people have never been before. So
explain where we are. I'm going to change the cameras, which I can do. We've tucked ourselves into a crevice, haven't we, at 135 meters.
Yeah, we're kind of leaning against the edge of a cliff, an underwater cliff. We were fighting some downdrafts and some updrafts when we got to this position, so we've just kind of parked ourselves on a ledge and are trying to stay stationary.
And I should give you your proper title, of course. You are an aquanaut. If an astronaut explores space, you explore the deep.
Yes, you know, we're in inner space. It's a whole new place down here, and you know, it's a 3D environment. So we're always moving around. We got to know where we are, how we're moving through the water column. Are we lighter? Are we heavier? All of that.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing to watch you with all the controls. And as you said, you're flying these submersibles. You're not driving them. And as you said, the oceans make up 97% of the habitable space on planet Earth, which gives you both a sense of the depth of the oceans, but also that 3D environment that Randy was talking about. We have joined an expedition led by the scientists of the Nekton mission. Their aim is to perform a deep ocean health check, to map, to chart, to sample, to see perhaps what no one has ever seen before, and even search for those rarely seen species lurking in the shadows, the dream perhaps of a 6-gill shark or even a coelacanth, the dino fish thought to be extinct for millions of years, and crucially to see what is happening to that often colourful coral as it faces unprecedented threats. It is so important as habitat and home to millions of species. The big question for the scientists is, could the deeper ocean be a refuge from the dangers of climate change and even from plastic pollution that we've talked so much about at Sky? Well, we are not alone down here. This is Sub 1. The red one, although it's been showered by this downdraft of sediment, which you will hear the team refer to as Omega. Out there, we can see them, is Sub 2, the yellow one. The yellow one. What are we in? The red one, I've already forgotten, which they call Kensington. Should we see if we can raise them, actually? Because in there is the principal scientist on this amazing expedition, Dr. Lucy Woodall from the Nekton mission, and piloting her sub is Robert Carmichael. Let's see if we can raise them on the sub.
Yeah, on underwater telephone. Kensington, Omega, come back. I'm going to pass you off to Anna to interview Lucy.
Hello, Lucy. It's Anna here. We're just talking about the importance of trying to explore the deep. Tell us a little bit more about your amazing mission here.
Try again.
Hello, Lucy. Can you hear me?
Release. I think she hears you. Go ahead.
Hello, Lucy. Can you hear us? I was just asking you about the reasons you're trying to explore the deep. Thank you, Lucy. We'll try and talk to you a little bit later. Thank you.
Well, let's go straight to these pictures we can see now from the remote camera, and it is of the one of the submersibles, and we are expecting them back any moment now. But some extraordinary rolling going on with submersible. I didn't know submersibles could roll, but they certainly can. And I'm joined actually by Professor Louise Alcock, who is with the science mission here and knows a thing or two about this. What do you make of these pictures?
I think you'll probably find it's the remotely operated vehicle that's rolling and not the sub, and that camera is turning,
well,
and the subs are the right way up.
That is a great reassurance. Thank you very much. I've never seen a sub roll. But what do you make of the picture, what we've seen this morning?
I mean, I think it's fantastic. We're in somewhere we've never been before. Nobody's ever been here. We're looking at a fantastic new environment, and our job is now just to try and work out exactly what it is down there. Do a little bit of systematics, check the species of corals, so that we can catalogue it all properly. So we've got a lot of work to do later.
Yes. So you'll be going down in these submersibles, or your members will, and this is the way that you can pick up samples.
That's right. One of the subs is equipped with a stereo camera system so that we can get really good video. And we've got cameras in various places, actually. They're pointing downwards, pointing forwards, and we've got a set on the side as well, in case we're in strong currents and we have to sort of power along a wall. So we've got one sub totally equipped for camera work, and the other sub is equipped with a biobox on the front and a collecting arm, and we have a permit to collect 5 specimens at each depth that we're working at.
Yes, and I think that is Anna's sub, and we can see her there preparing to make return to the surface, which we'll be very pleased about. She's had a wonderful trip. I mean, it is, for someone like Anna going down like this for the first time, it is just the most intriguing sort of other world, isn't it?
I think it's an amazing feeling. I mean, I've been in marine science for almost 30 years, and I had my first submersible dive back at Alphonse, and it was just incredible, the sort of feeling of calm. We were sitting on the bottom at 200 meters, and we just turned the lights out, and all the fish came, and it was just amazing. I mean, as a marine scientist, I just found it probably the best thing ever.
Yes, and you can't rush the ascent. It's a fairly slow process, isn't it?
I think everything is slow. They don't go particularly fast. The subs, we don't need them to go fast, because if we want good camera pictures, we need a very slow, steady transit. So they work perfectly for what we're trying to get out of them.
Yes. Well, we expect her back in just a few moments. So, Professor Alcock, just what is your role in all this?
So I came on board actually to bring a bit more experience with camera systems and deep water operations. So I mostly work with a deep water ROV off the coast of Ireland. I've got funding from Science Foundation Ireland to investigate the corals that occur in our deep waters. We get corals down to about 2,500 meters, which is absolutely fantastic. We work with camera systems. These are complicated bits of kit. Trying to get transits out of them in fast currents are a difficult thing to do, and it's something that I have a certain amount of experience in, and so I came on board to try and get all this working, really.
Yeah.
And I think we have. We've developed protocols now that we're running with the subs in very fast currents, and we're getting back the imagery that we need for analysis.
Yes, and we've talked about it a lot, but this place is especially rich, obviously. It's a very rich ecosystem. Do you think there will be new species that scientists haven't found here?
I think it's almost certainly the case. I mean, some coral species have a global distribution, and they put out, larvae, and these travel around the world in global currents. And there are some coral species that are really found all over the world. And then there are other coral species that have very distinct distributions. Often often, even in the same ocean, delimited by depth. So, 100 meters high, you get a different species of coral. It looks quite similar, but it's distinct. So the chances of us finding new coral species here, I would have thought are 100%. Aldabra is so remote that something here, or quite a proportion of what's here, has to be new. Some will be global species, and some will be Indian Ocean specific species, but some will be new.
Okay, well, what we can see is Anna Botting in that submersible, and she is on the way to the surface. So we're out of communication. The receiver that we were using to communicate is out of the water now, so we can't communicate with Anna, unfortunately. I think we can just see her. And what you can see in the foreground is the front of the remotely controlled camera, and that is what is producing these pictures at the moment. And she's about 2 minutes away from surfacing here in Aldabra. So we hear a lot, Professor, about bleaching events and the warm waters impacting on the corals. Any signs so far of that here at the moment?
So I haven't looked at the surface corals here. There's a dive team going out this afternoon to look at surface corals. So really our look so far has been at the deep water corals, and we wouldn't expect to see such an impact here. There's a thermocline here at about 70, 80 meters.
Right, and so you better just explain what a thermocline is.
So the thermocline is where the temperature changes really suddenly. So down to about 70, 80 meters, the temperature's around 28, 30 degrees. Below that, it drops steeply to about 15 degrees. And so in that colder water, bleaching is not going to be the same issue. Also, once you get deep enough, of course, these corals that are in really deep water don't have the symbiotic algae that the shallow water corals have. So there is some light at the depths we've been at today. In fact, the water's very clear and there's a reasonable amount of light. But as you get down to 250, 300, even 500 meters where we're going, there's less light, and there are different sorts of corals that wouldn't suffer from bleaching the same way.
All right, very interesting, Professor. Thank you very much indeed. Thomas Moore, science correspondent, is with me, and we're seeing the ascent of Anna, and she's on her way back to us, thankfully. But you've been in these submersibles. What's it like? I mean, is it very claustrophobic? It's very tiny, aren't they?
They are small. They are built for function, not comfort, shall we say. Yes. It can get extremely humid in there. In fact, one of my jobs was to empty all the water, the condensation from the air conditioning. But even the air conditioning doesn't really work very well because they like to preserve the battery life, these sub-pilots. So they have it warm, you get extremely dehydrated, you can't stretch your legs, and that's something that Anna will really notice, even though she's...
Well, she's not that tall.
I was going to say she's slightly more petite than us.
So apparently they're about 50 feet from the surface now, so...
Yep, so they will see a marked increase in the intensity of light now. They'll be able to see the sun pouring through the surface layer. Perhaps they'll be venting an awful lot of air from the submersible itself, and as they rise, they may even be going at the same speed of the bubbles, which is a very strange feeling that you are surfacing that rapidly, and then that dome will break the surface, and there they will see sunlight.
You can see the sunlight very clearly now.
Yeah.
In that picture. These are really wonderful pictures, aren't they?
To see the submersible silhouetted like that is quite extraordinary. And you can see the power of the sun, and it is that sun that drives the marine ecosystem. The more intense the light, the greater the chance, of course, of coral making energy and growing, but also the peril for coral too, that the combination of light intensity and warm water can spell coral bleaching.
And there we are. There is Anna Botting in her submersible. And well done to the pilot, Randy, and I'm sure he's now communicating with the little rib boat they've got on this ship, which will go out and pick up Anna after what has been, I mean, I have to say, just an amazing experience, I'm sure, for her. She was very excited this morning, certainly, when she knew that this was going to happen, because, of course, there are lots of things that can stop these things happening, and have stopped these things happening.
For sure, and there's the wave conditions, of course, have been quite benign here, but the currents have been the challenge, really. Wherever we have been in the Seychelles, when we are diving next to these enormous seamounts, they get very unpredictable, very strong currents, and partly because nobody has mapped the seafloor here in 100 years. So we have on board a team that is doing exactly that, using much more up-to-date equipment. Back in the 1800s, they were throwing ropes over with lead weights at the end, trying to gauge the depth. But now they're using sonar, and it is much more accurate and produces quite exquisite, colourful maps, very detailed maps, and that will definitely be a legacy of this mission.
Well, there's detailed notes in there that Anna Botting is just putting away. She'll need those again, just having a drink of water earlier, and she will have deserved every bit of that. But I have to say that this is worth still watching, because there's a very difficult manoeuvre about to happen, which is our presenter getting out of that thing and onto a rib, which could be, well, they will tempt fate, but it might be the most entertaining move of the entire last hour or so. But and in a serious point, so the rib has to go out.
Yeah.
The pilot will stay in the submersible, controlling the submersible, and then what they do is they pick up Anna, take Anna back. The pilot will eventually get out, and then the submersible will be lifted. Crane lifted out of the water. Is that right?
It is indeed. So Anna, the first thing that will happen is that the hatch there will open when the support diver is, or the support swimmer is there on board. He'll clamber on the back of the sub. As you can see, the front is beginning to submerge slightly below the surface. But he'll clamber on board. He'll open up the hatch. Then Anna needs to stretch those legs that have been crumpled up for the last few hours, stand on her seat, stand on another console, and then clamber up through that hatch. And try not to lose her balance, Mark, as the waves gently rock that submersible. And then, of course, she will make her way down to the rib that you see there as they're going off the back of our mothership, lifting off the crane that took that ship down, that boat down.
Yeah, I'm going to
motor around.
I'm going to watch how she does this, because I've got to do it tomorrow, of course. So because it's my turn down there tomorrow, and I have to say it is a very exciting prospect. We're talking about plastic.
Yes.
Plastic tomorrow, the impact of plastic tomorrow, and Anna will be on one of these extraordinary beaches where even here, one of the most inaccessible sanctuaries, inaccessible islands in the Indian Ocean, very difficult to get to, even here, plastic, tons of it, I'm told, is washing up. You've been there.
Yes, and saw plenty of plastic, and I saw wildlife being trapped, consuming it, and that's the peril for Aldabra. And there we can hear the crane just firing up, the driver going into his cab, and that is the crane that will be lifting Anna's submersible out of the water. Thankfully, not while she's still on board. There you can see the rescue swimmer just drying off the top of the hatch, because if you open that with the water still there, all that would pour into the cabin and on top of the very sensitive electronics that have kept Anna and Randy alive over the last few hours.
I have to say, I never thought that Anna Botting exiting a submersible would ever be a live television event, but I suppose, well, it's something, isn't it, what she's just done?
Well, you can see Randy inside also doing the same with the rag, trying to dry it off so that she can make a slightly drier exit than she would have done otherwise.
Yeah. And
and Mark, the longer they wait in there, the hotter it's getting, because the temperature here is good, mid-30s probably, and that is a greenhouse, and it heats up extremely quickly.
Dripping with sweat. So the lad there is a former Marine, so he knows what he's doing, and he will get Anna out of there. And the other submersible will be coming up soon, and they've effectively been down there taking samples.
Yes.
And how does the surveying happen? How does the mapping happen? That's a different way.
They've certainly been surveying. They have what they call stereoscopic.
Hang on, I've got to interrupt you, because
this is a television moment.
Well, it's a small television moment, isn't it, I suppose?
We're enjoying it.
And, but it's going to be the transfer from the submersible to the rib, the little inflatable that comes along. Hold on, Anna, please don't ruin this now. It's quite rough, isn't it? So the inflatable will come in, and you should see that any moment, fact, there it is. And now this little sort of, how would you describe it? Sort of little jump across, or
leap of faith.
Leap of faith.
The boat and the sub are going to stay together and not be separated by the Indian Ocean swell. You can see the driver of the boat there struggling to get the right position.
Yeah. Yeah, he is struggling. I wonder, this is a little bit... so what do they do if she has to stay out there? No, she's not. He's got all of it there.
Yeah. So the Marine grabs the boat. Anna will...
Bit of TV silence at this moment. Phew, she's done it. Give us a wave, Anna, for goodness sake. She's got no idea she's on live television. But there we are. So she is away. She'll be brought back now to the ship, and the pilot will also exit now. But these submersibles used, as we saw during that previous hour, for a very serious point. They have these robotic arms. They take the samples, put the samples in the submersibles, and bring them up here for the scientists that we've been talking to start looking at.
Yes, because they're looking for new species, and the only way of doing that is to bring them to the surface, where they can actually do some analysis. They can catalogue those species of coral for the benefit of the Seychelles, but also they have lots of cameras on board those submersibles. Some are pointing forward, some down. They have what they call stereoscopic cameras, as I was about to tell you before, and those are 3D cameras where they can try and understand the structure of the reef, the complexity of that reef. There's an awful lot of science that is done as these subs travel on what they call transects, marked distances along the reef, where they will be counting life, but also the different species of life. And that really is the kind of work that they'll be doing now. And there you can see that they're beginning to prepare the submersible for it to be lifted out by the crane. Randy, the pilot, is still on board. You can see him turning on his thrusters there at the back, trying to bring the submersible within range of the crane. And there you see emerging the bottom, the hook that Shane will then clip on to those the ropes that he's holding there above the glass dome of the submersible.
Yeah. Okay. So that is about to happen now, and in your top left is Anna on their way back, and I can't work out. Randy is going to go on the that rib as well. Thomas, just for now, thanks very much. Let's bring in our next guest, Mike Powell, who we were talking there. With Thomas about mapping and surveying the deep, and that's what you specialise in. That's what you do, isn't it? So
yeah, that's what we've been doing on this FRC. We've been going out.
Hold on. FRC. What?
It stands for Fast Rescue Craft. So it's normally used for man overboard situations, but we've fitted it out with all of our survey equipment. So when we get to a location, we go out first. We survey the areas, as Thomas just said before. A lot of these areas haven't been surveyed.
It's really a bigger version of the inflatable that we're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that. It's just a 6-meter version of that, and we're going out and finding a good area and a safe area for the subs to go down.
Yeah, and mapping I mean, how deep can you map?
So with the system we've got here that that Teledyne Marine have given to us, we can map down to about 600, 700 meters. So we're going from about 600 meters all the way in to about 4 or 5 meters. So we're going basically as far offshore as we can get. Obviously the subs can only go to 300 meters, and the ROV goes down to 500. So
you have
that's the area that we're interested in. Yeah.
And you can see it all on computer. Here comes Randy, who is down there with Anna Botting, very experienced submersible pilot, 10 years, an American guy who's been and actually put this submersible together for this trip. He takes it apart and then rebuilds it, so he certainly knows what he's piloting and certainly knows what he's doing. And now the rib will bring Anna, who has her hard hat back on, bring Anna and Randy back round to the ship, and hopefully we'll be able to see them reasonably soon. Yeah, so going back to, actually now, there is the submersible. Now that is being lifted back onto the ship, right behind us here. They're extraordinary bits of kit, aren't they?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic.
Have you been down in one?
I haven't had the chance yet, no. I've been out every day surveying.
Yes.
Hopefully get a chance towards the end.
Well, look, as we watch these pictures of the submersible coming back, we were just saying, so you have a computer on board your...
Yes.
So you can watch what your...
Yeah, so we see the 3D map of the seabed being generated in real time as we're going along. That all generates on the computer, and then once we're finished, we come back on board and we show that to the sub pilots and the ROV pilots, and then from that informs where they're going to do their dives. Obviously, the areas they're looking for are these big steep walls that they've been on today. So yeah, we were out yesterday surveying that, finding out where it is, so we can get the ship in the right position and find some good areas for them to do their science.
Yeah. Well, I hope they treat this submersible carefully, because that's what I'm going down in tomorrow. So I don't thump that thing down. But
they've got pretty good at it by now.
They have got pretty good at it by now. Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, well, Mike, thanks very much indeed.
No problem.
Thanks very much. And Thomas is back with us. So, Thomas, they'll be here a lot longer than we will. How long do these missions last, and you know, what will they do with the information they get?
Well, they're away for about 7 weeks. They'll be going on from Aldabra to other islands, outer islands here in Seychelles. Again, more seamounts on these underwater mountains. And they're trying to understand, they're trying to produce a catalogue of life, which is so important. The Seychelles government has been ahead of the curve on marine protection. That they really get it. They have already protected 15% of their vast ocean territory. That's the size of the UK, and they're going to protect another 15%, so doubling it by 2020. But what they need to know is, what do you protect? What is so special, what is so rare here in Aldabra to make sure that it is not destroyed by human activity from further afield, whether that be climate change or pollution, plastic pollution, or indeed overfishing. These are the issues that can affect these waters, and that is why they're desperate to protect the life within.
Yeah, and two big coral events fairly recently. What was it,
1998 was the first.
And then 2009 were three, because the 2016 as well. And what impact would those big sort of bleaching events, they're called, aren't they? What impact would they have had here, and would the coral have been able to resist that here?
So it did affect the coral here, but interestingly, the coral here in Aldabra seems to have been more robust, although an awful lot of it did bleach. That's when it spits out its algae, because it can't tolerate the hot water, and it just shuts down in effect. A bit like when we have a fever, we don't feel like eating. Well, the same is true of the coral too, so it spits out its food source, the algae. But what happened elsewhere in the Seychelles is that the warm water persisted and the coral died. But here, because it's in a marine protected area, because there are many more fish feeding all the algae that would otherwise have smothered the reef, that coral had a much better chance of recovery. Right. So it really has bounced back, and that is why you see such abundant marine life here.
And is this general warming or localized warming, or both?
That's a really good question. It is general. So every year in the summer, of course, you would get spikes in temperature here in the water. But what is happening now is that the background level, if you like, with climate change is increasing. So it's coming from a lower trough, and the peaks are getting higher each summer. And it's that summer peak which is getting much higher and at the top and much longer, and that's what's causing the coral many more problems, and particularly in an El Nino year. That's that current off the South American coast, which almost doubles up on what we're seeing with climate change.
So Anna is off the boat safely, or almost safely. It's another tricky moment.
This is a perilous ladder.
But, so she'll jump up the ladder, and she'll be back on board, which will be very good news after, well, quite a broadcasting experience for her, and well, for everyone, quite a broadcasting experience for everyone. No one will have seen that live for a while, and I have to say, I was a bit of a skeptic. I thought, well, they'll be cutting back to us because the thing, it was there, wasn't it? And we saw those pictures, and Anna did remarkably well. And there is Oliver Steeds. Oliver Steeds, who is the head of the mission, and he will welcome Anna back to the ship. And I have to say, I was talking to her over breakfast this morning, and she was saying last night that she wasn't nervous, and then this morning she admitted that it was all getting a bit tense. And then she was about to get in the submarine. There was a storm in the distance, and all those things go through one's mind. And as a broadcaster, you don't do these things very often, and they're exceptionally interesting, and we're exceptionally privileged to do this, but they are challenging nevertheless, and not something everybody would want to do, let's be honest about it. And but she's back, and we're very happy about this. I'm standing now with Paris Stefanadis, who is one of the scientists. And Paris, the reason I've just got you in here is because you have done this already, haven't you? You've been down and you had a look, and what did you make of the experience?
First of all, I would like to say it has been an amazing privilege, an extraordinary privilege to be able to dive in Aldabra yesterday. It was my first dive in a submersible. It was an amazing experience. We went to about 110 meters deep, and we saw a lot of healthy-looking ecosystems, rich with soft corals and fish. So far it looks very good, and I hope we will find the same results in shallow and deeper reefs.
Yeah, and you say so far it looks very good. It all looks pretty healthy, does it?
It all looks pretty healthy, no signs of coral disease, no signs of plastic pollution at the depth we surveyed yesterday. And fish seem to be abundant. We saw many different species of sharks, manta rays and moray eels. So I think so far it's good news. And let's hope we find the same things in the shallower ones.
So, well, hello. We've got someone with us now. We've got someone now with us. Anna is with us. Welcome back, first of all. Paris, stay here because you've done it as well.
I know. It's hot up here, isn't it?
It's hot, very hot up here. I'm dripping. But look, that must have been amazing.
Amazing, amazing. Even coming to the surface is amazing because you're coming through, you're surrounded by bubbles, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And next thing you know, it's like you're getting rocked up and down, and you pop out in the bright sunlight, and you see the ship here, and it's still washing up and down, and you feel like from the depths up to the light, and you feel that contrast. You know, absolutely amazing. All of it interestingly different all the way through. And there's
and then Randy, well done, Randy.
Holt.
Very well done. You're taking me tomorrow, so
I'm excited to do that.
You're excited. I don't think you are. You can't be as excited as Anna is right now.
Amazing.
I know, coming up is, one of the best bits, I have to say.
Is it?
It sounds really strange. I mean, going down as well, because you tip right down like that, first of all, and go down quite suddenly, even then. And then you drop through blue, and it's just blue and you. And I was expecting to see fish straight away, but it's blue and you until you hit the bottom, which is quite sandy. And then we're off finding deeper parts and rocky outcrops and little communities to see, sea fans, small fish, groupers. We had a shark circling above. From quite early on, the shark didn't want to seem to go. But they come to investigate who we are, what we are. They've never seen us before. And we dropped down to, we can't quite remember, 175 metres or so.
Well, that's when we thought we'd lose you.
Yes.
But we heard you. We heard of, sort of just about heard you. But we kept communication.
Yes, exactly.
It was amazing.
Exactly. And we can see they put this plate down with lights on it to be right there, so we can look up and see that quite clearly. And it's that the fish seem to like, actually. Never mind us.
Yeah, there was a shark checking that out as well.
For quite some time.
And Randy, how did she behave down there? I mean, was she nervous?
Pleasure to work with. So I mean, it's always exciting. And then we did a dive yesterday, but today was new. It was a new spot. It was a new environment.
Although he was worrying me because we went down quite early today, and he began to talk about us running out of batteries before we actually got on air. So that did worry me. So we parked ourselves up as best we can in a rocky outcrop, got the grabber arm out to hold a piece of rock, and stayed put for a while.
And Lucy will emerge with samples, and she's been doing serious science down there, and we'll be using that for...
Well, even visually, and don't forget we're recording it all. We turn the cameras on the rocks to see the anemones, perhaps, to see the coral, and all of that's being recorded, and then that will all go into a database, and that will be properly analysed. So the science is going on even with the cameras on.
Yes.
So that's happening all the time.
We might be able to see a little bit of you. Do you want to see yourself down there? I don't know whether we can. I mean, I'm sure we can. We can later. There's a highlights program later, but we just must have felt the most amazing experience.
The word is otherworldly,
yes.
Especially when you can see the other submersible with its lights on up against this really craggy, steep rock face. That's when it feels otherworldly, and you see what you must look like, because you're just in this lovely bubble of 270-degree sphere, perspex, where you can see so much, and then you see what you must look like when you see the other self, don't you? And then, I don't know if you still get that.
We just look like aliens down there.
Yeah. So look, 30 seconds left on the program. Your highlight. What was the best moment for you down there?
That's a tough one.
Well, always a shark.
So we had 30 seconds, we've now got 20 seconds.
Always the shark, and oddly the journey to and from.
I tell you what it was.
Okay.
I think it was you going right at the beginning, well, here we are. And here we were. It was lovely, and it was broadcasting first in so many ways.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful job. Very well done. And you can see all the highlights on Sky tonight. We're back tomorrow, 8 o'clock, Sky News, Sky Atlantic, skynews.com, and that is it from us in the Indian Ocean for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.